understand there was an incident that took place here?
Yeah, I'm a logger, and 2 weeks ago, we were all working out here. There was at least 20 guys, and we just started noticing things were moved.
From pieces of devoured flesh to a logger's body being discovered deep in the woods, this hunt for Bigfoot went terribly wrong. Where did it all begin? A haunted town. After finding strange evidence in California of a rare wolf species that only lives in southeastern Alaska, the Expedition Bigfoot crew followed the clues of this discovery, which led them to Prince of Wales Island in Alaska. On the island, things took a twisted turn. The locals talked about strange screams at night and stories of others disappearing or getting abducted in the woods. But what was causing all the unease? When Maria and her partner Bryce Johnson arrived on the island, they started talking to locals to gather more information about the island that would be relevant to their search. During their conversations, they heard about a scary incident that had happened just weeks earlier. The event had shaken the community so much that town meetings were held, and many people were still frightened by what had happened to the point that some of the locals evicted themselves from the town. Maria and Bryce spoke with about 20 people who were connected to the incident, but most of them didn't want to speak on camera. However, they got lucky when one man agreed to share his story. He only had one condition: his face couldn't be shown. The man, a logger by trade, shared his chilling experience. What he told them was unlike anything Maria and Bryce had expected to hear. His claims were not only detailed but so unbelievable that it left them questioning what might really be out there on the island.
Have you ever been up there?
No, hell no, I would never go up there. That's their territory. The old guys say that's where they are, that's where they live. If I was you, I would stay as far away as possible.
They met 30 miles from the nearest town on the island. There were no roads, meaning that people in the town could not come out there fast enough in case of any cry for help. And just like that, their horror story began. The logger shared what had left him and his crew so frightened. He explained that about 2 weeks earlier, while working with a group of around 20 men, they had started noticing strange things happening in their logging site. Tools and equipment would go missing, and when they went to search for them, they'd find the items moved to the edge of the woods. When Maria asked the logger if it could have been a bear, a common animal in the area, the logger was certain it wasn't. He pointed out that if it had been a bear, there would have been tracks left behind. What made the situation even stranger, he added, was that there were no footprints or any other signs of what could have been responsible. As if to add suspense to the story, the logger told them, that's what was really weird about it, and it happened a few times. It wasn't comfortable, and then shortly after that happened, that's when the sound started, like an animal that we've never heard of in distress before. The closest I can come to it is a woman getting attacked. The logger explained that while there were many animals in the area, none made the strange noises they had been hearing.
And the screams that you were hearing, did it sound like they were coming from really close to this area?
Well, the first night when we heard them, it was coming from down in the woods a little ways, and every night they just got a little closer, a little louder.
Maria and her partner spoke with him at the camp, where the loggers had been storing tree trunks before the mysterious events began. The logger added that the sounds started deep in the woods and weren't very close at first, but each night, the noises grew louder and seemed to move closer to their camp. The unsettling repeated incidents left the locals feeling uneasy and unsure of what to do. Some of the locals believed that something in the woods didn't want them there. The fear became so intense that some began leaving the island altogether. According to the logger, he and his crew felt like sitting ducks out there. They just didn't feel safe as they did their jobs. When asked if they thought it was Bigfoot, the logger's response fed the curiosity of the crew. He said, "We knew what it was, and people disappear out here. These things come and take them. That's why a lot of people don't like to talk about it." But the logger had more to tell. He explained to Maria and Bryce that these beings are believed to be in the mountains, and when asked if he had ever been up there, he said that he would never dare because it is their territory. Yet the logger was not the only person to believe that. The old folks of the town also believed that these beings lived in the mountains, deep in the woods, away from humans. Knowing that Bryce and Maria were not Alaskan natives, the logger ended the conversation by giving them a warning, saying, "If I were you, I would stay as far away as possible." Despite the warning, Maria and Bryce were on a mission to find this mythical, scary creature. After the logger's testimony, Bryce and the rest of the crew went and got their gear to begin the expedition. To the crew, the island was the most target-rich environment for Bigfoot sightings ever, considering the stories of the terrified locals. The target was an area surrounding a remote mountain. As they flew to the target, Russell told them about the Native American legends and stories of the area they were going to investigate, as well as the existence of a supernatural humanoid being that was more aggressive and more hostile. Knowing this, the team had to be on high alert since, besides the suspected Bigfoot, there were other predators, including bears and wolves, that added an extra sense of danger to their expedition. As dangerous as the expedition was, the team was well prepared for the job. At least, that's what they thought. The team used modern technology, including drones, to help in their search. At first, the drones picked up scents like rotting flesh, wet dogs, and other smells that didn't match what they were looking for. Eventually, the equipment gave them 2 possible locations for Bigfoot sightings. To cover more ground, the team decided to split up and investigate both areas. Maria took the target with a lower altitude, and Russell took the target higher up the mountain. It begins with a scream, then bones. While taking shelter from a storm later that night, Russell and his crew heard loud rustling noises getting closer to their camp. They noticed a strong, foul smell that matched what the locals had warned them about. The darkness of the woods made it hard to see anything, so Russell decided to grab a flashlight. He wanted to find out what was making the unsettling noise near them. The situation left everyone on edge as they ran into the dark woods looking for the alleged Bigfoot. And then, something unexpected happened. He saw pieces of devoured flesh and skin hanging in the trees. Before they could process what they were looking at, the rustling continued, and they saw something huge moving through the trees. They ran towards it, and on the way, they found freshly broken branches. In his expertise, Russell knew that the creature had passed through there. Before they could clearly identify what they were chasing, the rustling stopped, and the creature disappeared. And just like that, things got creepier. On the lower side of the mountain, Maria detected the same foul smell as Russell, and while investigating the area, she came across something unexpected, a pile of bones. This scared the hell out of Maria, as she had just come across what she thought to be Bigfoot remains. Upon closer examination of the site, Maria realized that it was a potential kill site for Bigfoot, something they had discovered in their previous Washington investigation. Seeing this, she quickly radioed Russell to report her findings. "Oh my God, I just found a pile of bones right in front of me, a couple of skulls and other bits." Using a handheld form of laser-guided technology, she continued to look for clues. The readings on her gear began going haywire, a strong signal for a potential encounter with a creature. This scared the crew, so they decided to send a backup to her. Before they did, the foul smell came closer, but then slowly disappeared, and the readings on the scanner went back to normal. To them, this was a clear sign that they were in the presence of a creature they could not see, and it was more intelligent than they had anticipated. They felt taunted. They felt like prey being watched by a predator. It was as if something was playing with their food. By this time, one of the crew had already caught up with Maria. As they stood in the darkness of the woods, they heard strange screams not so far from where they were. "What was that? What the fuck?" Bryce exclaimed. These sounds were unlike any known animal and created a sense of immediate danger and psychological fear in them. The creepy scream sounded like an animal in distress, coming from all directions. One consistent sound came from somewhere close to what they had mapped to be a source of water. The scream continued, and they suddenly heard rustling above them from the treetops, after which it stopped. At this point, they were sure that it was not a wolf or a bear. They also confirmed that the voices they were hearing sounded like a person in distress. "That sounded like a person yelling or something," Bryce exclaimed. To make matters even more creepy, the second scream they heard had a more human tone than the first one. This is precisely what the logger they initially met had warned them about. Recalling this, Russell told his crew to stay alert and watch out for anything. This was the old site that the logger and his team had abandoned. As they moved through the darkness with only flashlights being the source of light in the thick woods, the screams continued, and they still smelled the strange odor. Considering that the loggers had abandoned their construction site in fear of the creatures, Russell and his team seemed to be poking them by going deeper into the mountains. It's like they were right in their backyard in the middle of the night. Under Maria's suggestion, together with her crew, they walked down to the lake where the consistent scream came from. 2.5 miles east of Maria's location, Russell was returning to the location where what appeared to be animal skin was hanging from a tree. Reaching there, they were shocked to see that the piece of flesh was missing from the branches, and it was not on the ground. Whatever they had seen hanging was already gone. Using the images of the skin the cameraman had captured, they estimated the distance from the ground to where the piece of flesh had been to be 20 feet. In his expertise, Russell knew that there was no way a bear could have done this without breaking the pieces of branches as it climbed. It had to be something with the capability to maneuver on top of trees. Critically analyzing the situation, Russell admitted that they had been outmaneuvered by whatever took the piece of flesh, since it had to come back after they had chased after it. Yet, the creatures were stealthy like shadows, and avoided direct light from the crew's flashlights. This made Russell conclude that the animal had intentionally led them away from what it had left behind, so as to come back and collect it. In shock, Russell admitted that whatever they were going after was thinking 10 steps ahead of them. But that was not all. One of Russell's crew admitted to feeling like they were being watched by something. Feeling unsafe in the area, they had Zach, a gunman, accompany them the following day. Being experts, they knew that the previous night's rain meant soft ground, hence the probability of finding footprints. They decided to investigate the massive space, looking for physical evidence, but things wouldn't get as easy for them as they thought. The problem was that they spotted a lot of bear tracks all over the place with nothing closely resembling potential prints of Bigfoot. Zach explained to them that the many bear tracks were caused by bears who enjoy eating new growth as soon as the rains begin. This meant that there had been bears moving all over the place in search of food, but Zach assured them that they were safe during the day. Although they all survived the horrors of the previous night, Mireya noticed how this research trip felt more dangerous than ever because they had armed guards walking around them for the first time in any expedition. She explained that while the team had been to areas with many bears before, Alaska was different. The bears there were much larger, wilder, and not used to humans. This made them harder to predict and far more dangerous to be around since they could attack at any time. On top of that, since it was morning, the bears would definitely be coming out of their dens for an active day. Knowing this, Zach warned them that the bears would be hungry and things could get ugly very quickly upon encounter with one. For this reason, there was a constant sense of danger throughout the rest of the expedition. Having the armed guards really changed the feel of the expedition, and even though the armed guards would be watching from behind the scenes, they were a constant present walking reminder that the crew was in a dangerous zone. Guards with guns may seem like enough, but nothing could stop an angry group of massive humanoid cannibals hunting for human flesh. While most Bigfoot encounters are harmless, some get pretty violent and terrifying when these creatures decide no one should come near their territory. That's the chilling story tied to a ghost town in Alaska, where dark and twisted events happened. Portlock, the ghost town. Something strange has been happening in Alaska. Mysterious disappearances and horrifying deaths created a chilling atmosphere. Whispers of a strange killer humanoid creature circulated through the land, and the fear it caused became so intense that an entire Alaskan village was abandoned. Portlock, once a thriving settlement, was left to crumble into a ghost town. But what made Portlock so terrifying? This quiet village by the sea seemed peaceful, but its history was anything but ordinary. For centuries, people tried to live there, but the area was abandoned, not once, not twice, but 4 times. Portlock's story stands out from other ghost towns across America, not just because of its haunted past, but because it felt cursed. From people living there falling ill, and it wasn't just physical sickness, to them experiencing overwhelming fear and an eerie sense of dread that seemed to weigh heavily on everyone. Even the strongest among any explorers or tribe looking for greener pastures were overcome by terror. But it gets even worse. In 1867, a group of nomadic Sugpiq natives decided to settle there. They found the area rich in clams, fish, and moose. To them, it felt like a blessing. They were eager to start new lives in such a bountiful place, but the peace didn't last long. Within just a month, the Sugpiq faced violent attacks. These weren't the familiar raids from rival tribes. The villagers claimed their attackers were something much worse, cannibal giants. These monstrous beings, large in size and ferocious in nature, didn't come for resources or livestock. They came for human flesh. Night after night, the giants attacked with unimaginable brutality. The villagers tried to fight back, determined to protect their home, but the cannibal monsters were too much for them, and they had to evacuate too. But the haunting did not stop there. The disappearance of Andrew Kamluck. By 1930, Portlock had grown, and so had the residents' sense of safety. The once strict rules against visiting the foggy parts of the forest were relaxed. In 1931, a logger named Andrew Kamluck decided to venture deeper into the forest, ignoring the long-standing caution to stay near the edges. When he didn't return, his friends organized a search party. What they found sent shockwaves through the community. Kamluck's body was discovered in a horrific state. His head had been crushed by his own sled, a sled so heavy no human could have moved it alone. Nearby, his sled dogs lay shredded, and the sled itself had been flung far from the scene. The gruesome discovery left the search party speechless. The brutality of the attack raised a chilling question. What kind of creature could possess such strength and savagery? Kamluck's death was a stark reminder of the unseen predator lurking in the forest. The once distant threat felt closer than ever. The town was gripped by fear, But it wasn't long before another terrifying encounter took place. Tom Larson, another resident, ventured out to the shore to chop wood for fish traps. As he worked, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. A massive, hairy creature standing upright on the beach. It was too large and animalistic to be human, yet its eyes radiated an unsettling intelligence. Feeling both fear and an odd compulsion, Larson hurried home to grab his rifle. When he returned to the beach, he aimed at the creature, ready to shoot. But as he locked eyes with it, an unexplainable paralysis overtook him. He couldn't pull the trigger. The creature stared him down for a moment before retreating slowly into the forest, leaving Larson shaken and deeply unnerved. Though Larson's encounter ended without violence, it solidified the town's fears. The Nantinaq was no longer just a story. It was real, and it was growing bolder. No longer content with stalking the forests, it had begun targeting humans directly. The once thriving Portlock now found itself at the mercy of a predator whose power and presence were impossible to ignore. Camluck's death seemed to awaken something in the creature, a primal, vengeful instinct. Not long after, more residents of Portlock began disappearing, leaving the town in a cloud of fear. People began to whisper about the Nantinaq, describing it as a vengeful spirit, something relentless and unforgiving. They compared it to a tiger that holds a grudge against hunters, or an elephant seeking revenge on those who have harmed it. The Nantinaq, they reasoned, was no different, a creature filled with wrath, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. At first, a few gold miners vanished, but the townsfolk assumed that they had gone on long trips. Then, a group of hunters disappeared, raising more questions. Still, people reasoned it was just another extended expedition. But as the disappearances continued, a darker pattern began to take shape. Each vanishing felt closer to home, as though the predator was inching its way into the heart of Portlock. Soon, the truth became undeniable. Bodies began to surface, their fates gruesome and horrifying. Some were found in the bay, marked with deep claw and bite wounds. Others were discovered along trails or rivers, their remains so mangled they were almost unrecognizable. Whatever was stalking Portlock had an insatiable hunger, and its attacks grew bolder. The Alutiiq people, desperate to protect their community, tried to restore their strict ancient rules to keep everyone safe. Guards were doubled, curfews were heavily enforced, and caution became the town's way of life. Yet nothing worked. The Nantinaq was relentless, finding its prey regardless of the precautions taken. For a while, skeptics clung to the idea that a clever bear might be behind the attacks. After all, bears could roam the same territories as Sasquatch-like creatures, and their behavior could be misunderstood. But this theory quickly lost support. A discovery made after heavy spring rains shattered any lingering doubts. A body, torn apart and dismembered, was found swept down from the mountains. The damage to the remains was something no bear could have caused. The message was clear. Something beyond human understanding was preying on Portlock's residents, and the growing death toll strengthened the belief in the Nantinaq's terrifying existence. Guards patrolled day and night, but they could not stop the creature's rampage. Bodies continued to turn up along well-traveled paths, near rivers, and even washed ashore in the bay. Each was mutilated, bearing the undeniable mark of the predator. Fear consumed the town as the people realized they were being hunted by something far beyond their control. The Nantinaq, whether beast or spirit, had made Portlock its hunting ground. By some accounts, up to 36 bodies were discovered in the area, while countless others disappeared without a trace. Official reports put the number of missing people at around 15, but the native community believed the real number was much higher. They were convinced that the way the bodies were found, mutilated in ways no bear or wolf could manage, pointed to something far more sinister. As the disappearances and deaths continued, fear took hold of Portlock. Life in the town became unbearable, and survival seemed less and less likely. The Alutiiq eventually decided to leave in 1950. Their departure was swift and unconventional, with nearly the entire population evacuating overnight. From pieces of devoured flesh to a logger's body being discovered deep in the woods, this is how the hunt for Bigfoot went terribly wrong.